Okay, this is to show you how I'm working. I keep getting actually quite brutal shots, non-stop. Can you see them? I am in absolute agony, and I'm thinking about how to actually show you how I'm being shot at. So as you know, sorry, I'm going to switch this off and I'll try to last for a bit. So, okay, this is an absolute mess here because I'm trying, you know, to do many things at once, but I'm basically non-stop being attacked. So I'm going to show you how I have to sit, okay? This is the attacks are despite the shielding I have. Behind me there are 2 layers of aluminium. To my side, this is my office now. To my side I've got one shielding panel, another shielding panel going really high up because there's a neighbor in that direction, and when one solicitor returned my call, I had my skull, it felt like demolished because I received insanely painful shots to that side of my head. I was looking in this direction at the time, and then on the left hand side of my head I received massive shots. So I've got that. Otherwise there's a gap here so that I can get out of my office. There's a door behind that. Then I've got my desk and then shielding panels on chairs all around me here. All around me. Can you see? And then there's a gap there, but typically they don't really shoot through there, or maybe I'm wrong. So my office, I have to sit now in an office like this, right, in a bunker. Okay, so when you come in, what you see is this. Can you imagine? This is what you have to do when you're under Nazi assault. Okay, this is what you have to do. So I've got a fairly big office here, but I can't use that half because I can't actually insulate it. And just now I was standing over there and I was just looking at something and I received a massive shot to the head. So first I was standing here next to the door and the top of my head suddenly received a pulse. And at first I ignored it because I received so many. And then I was standing over there and my forehead, just looking down on my desk, my forehead on the left-hand side received an agonizing pulse. So something got just shot through my head, and it has to come from over there. Okay, in a moment I'll show you what's out there in the windows, but this is how I have to sit here. Okay, so when I'm in this bunker, okay, when I'm in this bunker, to explain to you what you see, these big shielding panels, these guys here, are moving boxes wrapped in aluminium foil that you can buy in the supermarket. And it's wrapped such that on either side of the cardboard box there are 6 layers. These 6 layers, if you can see, they are there. So it's 3 layers usually. Here's the other line. And they are shifted such that the bottom layer slides in, so it ends about here. You know, so the 2 overlap. And the idea is to kind of block out back reflections when it's like this, for example, when there's a kink. Okay, and these guys work really well. So I can say that with what I've experienced from direct radiation, direct shots, 12 layers of aluminium seem to do the job. Well, as far as I can tell. You know, I have no idea what these people are using. So that's that. On top of that, I have to, this will look ridiculous. On top of that, when the attacks start up, I have to wear a helmet. Literally, I'm sitting like this when the attacks get absolutely agonizing. And you know the expression tinfoil hat, that's exactly because the CIA or the army or whoever that was in the 1970s started punching these microwave beams into people's skulls in their home, and that's why they had to wear tinfoil hats, and they still do. But tinfoil hat doesn't quite do justice to the fact that for the last so I've just cleared out, by the way, this is my bin where you can see it's full of aluminium pieces, because when you're using aluminium it kind of gets brittle, you know, after a while, and develops small holes. This, for example, is my dog collar, which I have to wear, okay, because there were long phases when the experiment was demolish her thyroid, and they kept shooting at my thyroid, but brutal shots that punch through. And then I literally had to put this on and sit like that. I mean, does that remind you of an S&M dog collar in any way? because that's what it is, okay? And what I noticed also is that once I put this on, so this is, I think, about 3 or 4 layers of aluminium. Shooting at this has got absolutely no point because it gets reflected. But they kept shooting at it, and I could tell by putting the measurement device in front of it, or just a hand in front of it, because they painfully punched through my knuckles. And I think that's because either A, the software is just turned on to be just on, and they don't care how many pulses they shoot, and eventually you turn it off, take it off, and then you receive the doses anyway, you know, in the demolish mode. Or else they really find it very amusing because they can't see me inside my home, and when they want to humiliate me, they essentially force me to wear this, you know, and as soon as I take it off, I will receive extremely painful shots. And victims do this not because they think this is fashionable or some sort of obsession with aluminium leads them to it. It's because metal is the only thing that blocks out electromagnetic waves. And frankly, I can't actually have, you know, cast iron or steel in front of my throat. So this is the cheapest, the lightest, and the most effective solution, right? And that's, by the way, why these moon landers and these satellites and so on, you know, were traditionally just covered in aluminium, because it works. That's right. You know, if you go to a museum and you see a moon lander, you should see like lots and lots of aluminium. It looks like it's, you know, it's aluminium foil, but that's basically it, because metal, right, blocks out these electromagnetic waves. Now on top of that, right, so this is what my bin looks like, okay? So you can tell that what I'm saying is the truth, because it's like from all the last couple of days, these are my protective covers, and if I don't do this, I pay the price. It's extremely painful. But the other thing that tinfoil hat doesn't quite do justice to is that if you're attacked with a pencil beam, or I should say rather 2 pencil beams, because as I explained, sometimes they overcross inside you. When you're attacked by a pencil beam, for example, what they regularly do is drill a pencil beam into my spine. It's agonizingly painful, it causes cancer, and it demolishes my spinal cord. So what you have to do, literally, or with your woman, they like to drill it into your breasts as well, to cause breast cancer, to shoot at my heart also. You know, they've done lots of experiments with that. And then what you have to do is literally put this around yourself like that. You know, wrap it around you, and then you sit here like Lady Gaga. Really. So tinfoil hat doesn't quite do justice to that now, does it? That you have, you know, sick bastards running around shooting powerful beams into people's homes and demolishing the health of young women. I'm not that young, but you know what I mean, you know. Basically, I don't expect to be physically disintegrated by degenerate scum, you know, in my early 30s. That's what I'm saying. Then, the other thing is, they are non-stop brutal pulses shot into my head. Agonizingly painful. You saw a couple in the beginning. That's those guys. They shoot this at me every couple of seconds. And there's also finer clicking that's also causing pain. That doesn't show up as an intensity spike. I think that might be fringes of higher frequency beams. So this is how I live. That was another attack. And this is why I have to wear head protection, because your head is cracking. Because what's actually being done with this, sorry, I can't stand the noise, I'm already getting stressed, but ow, I mean, it's extremely painful. So I'm just going to leave it here. I'm going to leave it here, and every time you see this jump up, this is an attack. That's an attack to my skull. You just saw a beam being drilled into my skull, coming from either from the top or from, you know, somewhere from the hill, or maybe from something that was put into the attic or on the roof. I have no idea. Now those things, those are the attacks. These things drill into my skull painfully. Okay, let me just turn it on. The beeping seems to be the targeting, because usually it's like beep and then click, beep, click, beep, you know, burst. Can you hear that? Those are the shots. And they are agonizingly painful. you feel that you're being demolished inside your brain, basically. That is what's happening. Sometimes they stop, so when I'm talking out loud and I'm connected to the internet and the ISDN phones are on, you know, they tone it down, but not always. And as I said, I mean, I already have the videos for the insane assaults. Then the other thing that happened, so these are these assaults. Oh yeah, okay, you just saw one. And that's ongoing. Look, if I switch this off and there's no visualization of what's going on and you just see me, look, it's all peaceful now, right? You can't tell, but my head is in agony. You know, one after the other, these shots get fired and I have to talk normally to you. And, you know, throughout last night's show, I took off my head protection because I thought if people hear aluminium crackling in the background, they'll immediately think, oh, crazy lady. And the truth is that whilst I was talking to Richie Allen, I received such painful shots. It's like a retaliation thing, you know. So if I slipped or if I haven't listened to the recording, but if I, you know, suddenly just don't make sense, I have a slip up, that's why. It's because, you know, sometimes these things get punched into your brain, they deposit energy, and the electricity essentially just, you know, throws your thoughts because it triggers other stuff, and you're just like this. So try talking in full sentences when this is happening to you, you know. All of these things, every time you see it flash up, I'm in pain. Then the other thing I want to show you is this morning I came out and you know, what happened is that essentially it was like this. I got up, I you know, wrote down some thoughts of what I want to do today, and you know, how I would actually like to structure my day. And then I went to the post office to post some very, very important letters. I was stalked to the post office, and I also know by now that they've got little Nazi nests here. I call them Nazis, even though it doesn't. I don't mean the National Socialist, you know, political and national sentiment sort of implications. No, I mean the sick, degenerate, bastard, psycho implications with this that are associated with this word by now. Okay. So for me, Nazi is a shorthand for psychopathic, sadistic, degenerate bastard. But Nazi is just shorter. So these Nazi nests, right, in here, what they do is they rent flats, and then they train up their little gang stalkers, their little Hitler youth, you know, their little Zersetzungsteams, you know, little degenerate crack teams. And they have several of these Nazi hubs here, these little Nazi nests. They are essentially intelligence agents and trainee intelligence agents. And they are being taught how to gang stalk, how to disconcert with gang stalking, how to use psychology against people, how to use electromagnetic weapons. And they seem to have these electromagnetic guns planted around my home. And they teach little kiddies how to shoot at people and how to program the software so the software shoots at me. At night I'm being shot at non-stop. And my body, and I'm 100% sure also the body of my parents and my siblings and maybe even my friends, is being used as a human experiment. And I have got reason to believe that that's the case, okay? So, oh, by the way, I forgot to do that. This video is a bit of a mess, but what I also want to do is I want to make absolutely every video under oath so that it can also be used in court. Should something happen to me, this is all evidence, okay? So, I forgot it in the beginning of the video, but in this video I say I want you, you know, to apply to the whole video and usually to what I'm saying because I'm always saying the truth. But here it's now official, okay? You can see this is according to the Oaths Act 1978, the witness affirmation. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Okay, so as I said, I've got reason to believe that both my siblings and my parents have been attacked. I think it is highly likely, I mean for my parents even more gravely, I've got very, very good indication that this is the case and that their bodies might also be shot at and be used for experimentation. In my case, it's 100% sure. I had several medical complaints that were absolutely unusual. The medics couldn't find anything, and it was always highly unusual. Either it went on and on and on and on, got ever harder until I saw a doctor, gave a blood sample, and then it disappeared. Or until I went and had an MRI, then it disappeared. Literally like boom, that day it was gone, you know, but you do have the MRI appointment, so you go, you know. That's happened to me over and over. As I said in previous videos, I sat at my desk, I had microwaves punched into my knee until I literally had to seek medical help because my knee was so painful I couldn't walk. I literally, my knee got damaged sitting at my desk. My hip got damaged in this episode, which I'll talk about in more detail. When I actually emailed, I submitted a claim to the Investigatory Powers Tribunal in the UK. I emailed the Bundesnachrichtendienst in Germany and requested a cease and desist. And after that, my hip got essentially not quite crippled, but permanently damaged, basically, with shots of electromagnetic weapons. So they are very, very powerful. And they've already done this. I mentioned the shot to my kidney. By the way, last night I noticed that there is actually a red mark, and I'll put up the photograph. So there seems to be like a burn mark / bruise exactly at the point, and then you can figure out if that's my kidney or my liver. I mean, have to say, when that happened, my entire side hurt. Okay, so then it's really, really hard, because these beams have also got a burst, you know. And I think there might be a beam halo as well. So you can see the burn mark and the bruise, and it seems to be roughly the size of a pound coin. But my entire body hurt. I mean, my entire side just hurt. And, you know, with aches, figuring out where exactly the damage is extremely hard. So I think now from the pictures, it looks more like my kidney. My kidney got hit yesterday, or you know, the night of yesterday. It was yesterday morning at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. But literally it's out for specific, you know, demolishing. And what I wanted to say is, this morning I got up, I wrote some stuff down, and I was sitting at my desk writing this stuff. And because I'd gotten up and I was just, you know, doing lots of stuff, I hadn't put up the shielding. I'm using the same, in the evening I'm taking these shielding panels, because they take ages to manufacture if you want to do it right, and you have to put this plastic foil on top so you don't breathe in aluminium, and they take ages to make. And I had left these, you know, panels. I don't have that many of them, but you know, I left them in the bedroom because last night I was sleeping on my own, my husband in the living room, and I bunkered down. I make a triangular bunker, and I sleep in it with head protection. That's how I have to sleep. And I'm not joking, I'm not making this up, and I don't sleep like that because I've got an obsession with this bullshit or because I like it. I do it because I'm essentially under military assault by military lasers, okay? There is actually, I am being shot at with military weaponry, and I do have evidence for that, okay? So that's it, that is now what's happening. This is why I'm doing this, and this is why I have to sleep in a bunker, okay? Right, so this morning I came here and I put down these panels. Sorry, no, that's it. I came, sorry, I'm getting confused. I came here, I sat down and I was writing stuff, and I didn't put down these things. I put them down later, but whilst I was sitting here, I was just looking down like that. And essentially, I received a massive burst to my left eye. And now, I'm not sure if this camera can actually show it. Can you see the red mark there? Here? Can you see the line? Like this line. And if I close my eyes, watch where the line goes. It's right here. It's right into my eyeball along the optical nerve. Okay, so if you look closely, sorry, it's awful, but you see these marks as well, and those were also shots, painful shots that I typically receive at night. I mean, some of them, in the beginning, I thought I also am prone to just, my skin flares up when I'm under an awful lot of stress. And I am under an awful lot of stress, as you can figure out. But also on top of that, there were these deep, I mean, you know, inflammations. And then I realized actually what happened is that these are like lesions, actual skin damage from where the pencil beam got drilled in to my skull. Because I don't just have them here, I also have them under my hair. So in different parts of my, on my skull. Essentially what happens is that these pencil beams, they are microwave beams, so they microwave your tissue, okay? And anyway, so the tissue gets damaged and your body starts a repair operation, That's what's happening. So what is actually being done to me when I lie down at night is laser surgery, microwave surgery on my brain, otherwise known as, you know, lobotomy, or the neurological destruction of my brain. And I'm not joking, I'm not making this stuff up. Okay, so if you can see, it's very hard to see in these light levels, but here you don't see anything, right? There. And here, sorry, can you see? There's this red line there. And that wasn't there last night. In fact, it wasn't even there this morning when I brushed my teeth. And it came about when I sat down here. I didn't have these panels because I thought, right, I'll just write something down. And now as I'm sitting at my desk, my face is facing east. Okay? And I will show you how you can help me figure out how they are doing this. So essentially what has happened is that I sat here and they fired a military beam into my eye socket, which goes along the optical nerve straight into my brain. And I had several shots like that to my right eye, and my right eye is now blurry. So I do now, after last week, because these assaults to my right eye started right last week, or maybe it's a week and a half ago by now. I have to check my logbook. But essentially now my right eye is damaged. And now this morning, as you can see, I've just received the first shot, obvious shot to my left eye. So essentially what we're down to is now the systematic destruction of my eyesight for the sake of a human experiment to test these non-lethal weapons. That's the situation. And then what happened this morning is essentially I also read out a letter at the end. So I went to the post, I got ready and I went to the post office to send a couple of letters. And then as soon as I walked out, so my house is being monitored 24/7. I have been under continuous surveillance with every aspect of my life continually surveyed for 5 years. And there's solid evidence for that because people quoted stuff back to me. People went to places, stalked me to places and overtook me and, you know, went the last 500 meters demonstratively in front of me when I arranged things over email or phone or text message. So everything I do is being surveyed by these, you know, by the crime cartel, by the intelligence crime cartel. But then also what they do is that they have these little flats which they hire, and you can ask any other, you know, MI5, MI6 whistleblower, or any intelligence person or security person, you know, because there are lots of private contractors, that yes, indeed, this is what you do. And in fact, there are also statements by private investigators online where people asked for help. And they said, well, the first thing I would do is rent a flat, put down a camera and survey this property. So it's like, it's in intelligence, this is 101. That's just what you do. And the intelligence services have essentially an infinite budget. You know, I think that's the best way to think about it. They've got a nominal budget, which is in the billions, but I think actually, you know, they can just generate money should they need it. And then what they do is they rent these flats, or they use the flats of gang stalkers or informants, you know, who maybe gets tax benefits, and then just place down equipment, or they just hang out there. And then when you go out, you're essentially attracting a crowd of these gang stalkers, and that's what happened. So today I just randomly went, you know, to the post office, and a lot of the people noticed that if you maybe you have a close by post office and you drive past it, and every single time you drive past it there's like maybe one person inside or two people at most, and otherwise there's no one around. And then one day when you go, suddenly there are 20 people, you know, and this sort of stuff. They play around with that nonsense, you know. And what these people are is they are essentially the gang stalkers from the local, you know, community. And the local gang stalking community, that's another game that they play, is that essentially you get irradiated here, but you can also feel that your face is burning, and then your nose starts tingling, and you're essentially forced to sneeze, and that's one of the things that, you know, they harass you with sometimes as well. It's not normal sneezing, honestly, because you can feel it burn here, so you can feel the beam, you know, actually hitting your nose. But anyway, so there was this massive gang stalking, and then I thought, right, I'm not going to queue, with so many people, and more people kept coming. I thought, right, I'm going to go elsewhere. And I went to the bank, and there was again a queue, but I did again something else. And then I went back to the post office, and then it's this typical gang stalking thing that, there's a door, an exit from a shop, say, and then a gang stalker will be standing right in front of the door, so that you're essentially walking towards him, but long enough, so far enough away from the door that he doesn't block the door. So this trick is essentially that you see him, you notice him, and it's like a signal of that's a gang stalker. It's part of the harassment, because it will happen over and over to you. But no one can say anything because it's just a guy standing there and waiting. So today I went to the post office, and then these two people came, and I already thought, oh, they do look like gang stalkers. Just the way they go into a shop. Most people are just dreaming, doing their own thing, looking on the floor. When someone comes in and does like a survey, like this, it's not normal. And when they have a lot of eye contact between themselves and eye contact outwards, their head is usually like above. Most people look down and do their own thing, and these people, survey the field and keep eye contact with other gang stalkers in the street. So they are a lot more alert. So I spotted these two people, and then one person joined the queue, the other person went out. And then when I came out, this person was again gang stalker pose right in front of the door. But you go out, you can go around him, but if you just went straight, you would walk into him. And as I was coming out, he kind of looked around, grinned at me, and looked back. Again, you can't go to the police and say, oh, someone grinned at me over their shoulder. So this is these little things that the gang stalkers are using to signal to you with you're still under observation, still ongoing, there's nothing you can do. So that was the gang stalking scene inside the post office. And then I walked back, and immediately someone was waiting and then set off and followed me. And then I went into another shop, and then the person walks past but keeps looking over their shoulder. Where's she now? That's also typical gang stalker. If it's someone in the street, they just keep going. They're doing their own business. But if they keep looking back, where you're now, it's clear that they're a gang stalker. And that's what happened. And I thought, okay, what's coming now? Usually there's a crescendo when these things happen, when there's 2 or 3 noticeable things. So I walked back to my home, and then as I turned into the street, there was a black car with blackened windows standing in front of my house. And that was at the end of the street, and it had its so its lights on and the brakes on, so all you see at the back is like red lights, and that's also on purpose. They do use the back lights on a car to draw your attention, simply because if you've got red lights in your face, you notice. So a car from the back with both brakes and lights on flashes up red from the back, and the car like that was red in front of my drive. And that's very interesting, because if you're parked somewhere for a very long time, you would just switch everything off. And then as I came closer, I realized it had taxi written on top. So there was a taxi waiting for ages in front of my house, and my neighbors, they don't leave the house. It's an elderly couple. They certainly didn't ask for a taxi. They've got their own car. So, and a taxi would only stand there if it was something to do with their house. So, you have basically, again, a spectacle. So I thought, what now? So this black taxi just there. And then what happened is that as I came closer, the taxi slowly started rolling off. And again, this is like this creepy thing, This is not a normal taxi, especially, taxi drivers, right? They're like, okay, right, next job, mowing people down on the way, And this was literally the taxi just pulled out and then started just rolling really slowly. I mean, this sort of creepy mafia nonsense, So I thought, okay, right, this is another spectacle. And then the way my street is set up, this is essentially a one-way street, and you have to do a loop to come, and then it's like dead ends, and then you have to come back to the main street, you have to loop around. So, I saw the car drive off, and I pretended as if I'm going back into the house. But when the car went around, I just walked back out, and I walked back to the street to have a look of, what sort of car this is. So I was at the end of my street when this car rolled back down. And it was interesting because it was coming along, and then, as it saw me, it slowed down. and then it just rolled past me, you know, really, really slowly, and it was essentially the taxi driver in the front and blackened windows at the back. You couldn't even see through. It's like extra thick blackened. It was just black, 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 black at the back, you know, for a taxi. Okay, this is like creepy mafia taxi, you know. If your mafia boss needs a taxi, they call this special, you know, company. Anyway, so then it's just like slowed down and then just rolled past me and then drove off. You know, it was like creepy nonsense theatre. Anyway, what I did get from that by chasing after the taxi was the number plate. That's just a taxi driver, but people can find out who was in the taxi, where it was going, where the person was picked up, and what the hell the theatre was about in front of my property. So the actually, I've written it down. So the number plate was ZH 320 248. So ZH 320 248. So ZH, that's for Zurich, and then 320 hyphen 248. And it was in front of my house at 11:15 a.m. Swiss local time. So, you know, that is, again, this theatre. And also the guy who was, I should also say another thing, that in the gang stalking, in the harassment, there's some sort of China connection, because the China theme just comes up over and over and over. So this guy, the guy who was standing in front of the post office, looked Chinese. He looked, or maybe it's another, you know, Asian. I'm not actually familiar with the physiognomy, I can't, but, you know, Far East Asian guy standing in front of the thing who grinned at me, and I recognized him from previous gang stalking theatre, number one. There's also other connections to China, and I'll point them out. But, you know, there's some, I mean, I don't know what this creepy stuff is. I mean, this is essentially some Nazi program to take out dissidents. And, you know, I do know that China is, they want to have some sort of like social score for you, you know. They, whoever they are going to rate everything you do in your life. And then the idea is that you will progress based on your, you know, life score. I mean, what a Nazi idea. Anyway, I really hope the Chinese, you know, get their head out of their rear and don't do that. But anyway, so there seem to be all these like Nazi domination and, you know, rating people sort of programs going on that governments are trying all around the world. And maybe this is it, you know. The Chinese like join into the little Nazi trials that the Europeans are doing and seeing, you know, what works and what not. Well, I really hope that here in Europe we can get across to the Chinese that gang stalking really doesn't work, and shooting at people with microwave weapons also really doesn't work. This is essentially the goal, right? We have to make it absolutely clear that this is not what we stand for anywhere in the world, you know? And we have to make it clear, because I think that the you know, psychopaths, the reason why the Nazis were the Nazis is because they were psychopaths, okay? Psychopaths got to the top, and psychopaths love murdering people. So, you know, that's why the Nazis were like that. But then again, the communists were also like that, because again, Nazis got to the top. So, not Nazis, psychopaths, you know? So it doesn't matter if you call them communists or whatever. This is what it is. So this is what happened this morning. So by the time I made my last video, I was already really shaken up. I had received, as you can see, this line to my eye, sitting at my desk without shielding. Then, you know, I put up the shielding. I was just standing in my door frame. I received a pulse to the top of my skull. And then, you know, I ignored that. I went up to the window, and I'm being shot at through the window. So through the window, I receive agonizing shots. But also when I'm sitting at my desk, essentially I just receive insane sort of irradiation. And what I also have is just regular popping sounds in my head. It literally sounds like something small bursts inside your skull. And I think what these things are is essentially high-powered microwave beams being just, you know, shot in. And it's essentially, you know, the damage that you can feel. I'm not sure what sort of damage. With microwaves, I would essentially expect superheating. So you kind of cook bits of the brain, you know, and it could be literally just that, the expansion, you know. It's almost like cavitation, bubbles exploding. But it's these sort of popping sounds that you have all over in your skull, and that's essentially an artifact of these high-powered beams being shot into your head. Anyway, I've talked far too long. I'll explain in much shorter videos what actually all these weapons are, as to the best of my knowledge. So thank you for listening, and from now on I'll make shorter videos.